As far as the food was concerned, of course, the rations were very small. 2 ounces of best butter each, which was just £0.5 for the 4 of us, and a quarter of a pound of sugar. And the tea was about 1 ounce of tea, so we had a quarter of a pound of tea a week. The meat was about 1 and twopence worth, about 7.5 pence. And you couldn't have meat every day. Sausages went on the ration. Now you could get sausages, but you had to get to the shop early because they were in short supply. So if you wanted sausages, then you'd got to be there when the shop almost opened, 8:30, 8:45. And then you could get a pound of sausages for dinner. And of course the sausages had a lot of bread in them. They weren't all meat, they allowed them to put bread. We had a special card, a white card, and every month you could have something special with that card. And you'd see the shelves at the one end of the shop full of these things that were special. And you could only have one on each card, which meant one item for each household. Now on the shelf there'd be a pound of rice, tins of custard powder, a bottle of tomato ketchup, a bottle of Daddy's sauce, a tin of treacle, all things like that, but you could only have one. So if you had custard powder that month, you couldn't have any sauce of any kind. You couldn't have Daddy's sauce or anything like that. Now in Christmas 1941, of course the factories were all working full out, and we really were getting on top of it. They were building the planes and the tanks and everything, and everybody was working really hard. The women had all gone back to work. Everybody was doing the very best they could, and they'd got music while you work going. And my sister, who worked in this factory making landmines, she said when they first put on music while you work, it was amazing how the production went up. People were sort of working to the music and working quicker. And she said the production really went up. It really was a very good idea of the government to put music while you work in all the factories. Where my husband worked, of course, they were all working full tilt as well in the nickel works. And he came home one day and he said, this was about a fortnight before Christmas, and he said, Win, a notice has gone up this morning, he said, and you know what it says? It says that we're only going to have 1 day's holiday at Christmas due to pressure of work. Oh, I said, that means we can't go home, Don. And he said, I'm afraid not, love. No, we won't be able to go home. Well, my parents lived in Birmingham, and we'd got a little Ruby saloon car, and we only had 4 gallons of petrol a month, but we used to save it to go home. But now it was Christmas, and we knew that we couldn't manage it in 1 day, because with the blackout, it was terrible trying to get along in the blackout, and you didn't know what the weather was going to be like at Christmas time. If there was a lot of frosts and it was dark and you couldn't see where you were going, it was no good. My husband said, never mind, Win, he said, we'll make a Christmas here. I said to my husband, well, I said, I'll go down to the shop and I'll see if I can order a chicken. So I went, and the butcher looked at me and started to laugh, and he said, a chicken, Mrs. Barber? He said, well, he said, every bit of poultry and that I'm likely to get has been ordered over a month. I went home and I told my husband, and he said, and what you going to do then, Win? I said, well, I've been thinking about it on the way home. I think I'll buy some belly draft pork. I said, now I shall get a bigger piece of that, which means that if I cook it for Christmas Day, there'll be some left to slice cold for supper and a bit left for Boxing Day. So it was one of the cheapest cuts you could get, you see. So I said, I tell you what I'll do, I'll make some white sauce and put plenty of sage in it. Because you couldn't make sage and onions because, of course, we couldn't buy onions anywhere. So it was a case of doing the best you could. So anyway, a day or two later, I met my neighbour, Mrs. Griffiths, and she said, "Have you heard the news, Mrs. Barber?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "What are you going to do?" She said, "I was saying to my husband, you won't be able to go home, will you?" And I said, "No, I'm afraid not." I said, "I've been down to the butcher's to try and order a chicken, but they say there's none available. They've all been on order for a month." She said, "Actually," she said, "my turkey," she said, "has been on order for 2 months." Anyway, the day before Christmas Eve, she knocked my door. And she said, "Mrs. Barber, could you do with a duck?" And I said, "You mean a toy duck?" Because toys were very scarce. We couldn't get toys for the child, you see. "No, no, no," she said. "I don't. I mean a duck that you can cook for your Christmas dinner." I said, "Where are you going to get that from?" She said, "Well, last night," she said, "when I was down in the British Legion," she said, "one of my farmer friends came in." She said, "And he said to me, 'Could you do with a couple of ducks?' I immediately thought of you, and I thought, I know one person who'd like a duck." So she said, "I've brought you one of them." She said, "I'm going to cook the other one." She said, "We shall have it for supper with some of the turkey." She said, "Because we like duck." She said, "But I thought you could have the other one." I said, "Oh, I don't know how to thank you and what to say." I said, it seems almost an impossibility come true." And Christmas Day came and I cooked it. And we sat down to Christmas dinner with duck in front of us when we thought it was going to be so different. My husband started to eat it and he said, "Oh, Win, this is absolutely delicious. Oh, it's wonderful," he said. Oh, God bless the British Legion. Now, in 1942, it was just before I left South Wales, my neighbour was coming in to have a cup of coffee one morning. She sat down and she was looking all smiling. She said, "I brought you a gift." So I said, "Oh, there was no need, dear. You know you're very welcome to come in." She said, "Oh," she said, "you wait till you see what they are." And she opened her hands and there was an onion in each hand. Oh, I just couldn't believe it. I was absolutely, I said, "Wherever did you get them from?" "Oh, I haven't seen an onion for 2 years." She said, "No, neither have I, my dear." But she said, "You see, one of the farmers at the British Legion, he managed to get a few seeds, only a few," she said, "and he'd really grown them for his own family. But," she said, "he brought me 4. She said, "So I'm letting you have 2. And I said, "Oh, no, 1'll do." I said, "You've got a much bigger family than I have." "No," she said, "you're going to have 2 of these onions." And I thought, I'm going to put one on the mantelpiece so that everybody who comes in will see it. But anyway, the other onion, I found a little box and I put some cotton wool in it and I tied a blue bow round this onion and I put it into this little cardboard box and I sent it to my sister in Birmingham. And she told me afterwards, she said, "Oh, when I opened it and saw that it was an onion," she said, "I just jumped up and down, up and down, up and down." And I was saying, "Oh, an onion, oh," she said. And I was so excited. She said, I caught hold of it and I ran all the way down the road to my friend's on purpose to show it to her. She hadn't any children. She'd been conscripted into a factory making landmines. And she said, "I'm going to take this with me this morning. I'm going to take it to work with me." And she said that onion went round everybody in the factory, including the bosses. They all had a feeling looking at this onion. It was absolutely amazing, the joy that the look of one onion gave to people. Things were so scarce that just one onion gave you terrific joy.